Big 12. I can't even get these conferences straight now because it's like the number doesn't even line up with how many teams and they're moving. And even Gus Johnson in the TCU CU game kept saying Big 12, and then Joel Klatt's like, hey, they're still technically in the Pac-12 this year, and then he had to correct them. So there's a lot of moving parts, but this rivalry, they used to play it every year, and then back in, I think, 2018, kind of brought it back, played 2018, 2019. So they're back in Boulder. And, of course, Colorado. We have to talk about Colorado because if we didn't talk about Colorado, then people would be like, what are you guys doing? But maybe you guys are sick of hearing about the Buffs. This total, this look ahead, actually, not the total, the look ahead spread, Yvette, was, I believe, 8 for Nebraska.
Yep.
And now Colorado is favored by 3, 2.5 at some spots, a little juiced. So we're talking about a difference, a movement of like 12 points, which is absolutely unheard of from like week 1 to week 2 from like a preseason line. Totals at 59.5. What are your thoughts with this game? Like, where do you begin with as far as like that move? And what do you think's going to happen in this one?
Well, I actually have, I kind of went back and forth with Nebraska. So we had, I think there were like 11 Big Ten teams favored in week 1. Only 3 of them won and covered.
Mm-hmm.
Nebraska obviously has issues with close games. They're 2-14 in 1-score games, and they led in like 11 of those 14 losses or something along those lines. So the same thing plagued them last week, right? Turnovers. They should have won that game against Minnesota. They had every opportunity. They couldn't secure the bag in the end. Just in the first half, they were inside the 5 3 times and couldn't score. I mean, it's and now they're going to Colorado. I mean, Nebraska's defense is definitely improved, but I am not a fan of the Marcus Satterfield offense. I believe that I know Matt Rule likes he plays well in an underdog role, but which is essentially what is happening with all the hype that this game is getting.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm not a fan of the Marcus Satterfield offense. I've gone back and forth from thinking Nebraska is undervalued because everybody is talking about Colorado, that fantastic performance, to questioning how they're going to keep up with Colorado's offense. So there were 4 guys that had over 100-yard games, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And like last season, that only happened twice. They only had 200-yard receivers, like during the entire
whole season. Yeah.
I mean, it's just wild. Now Nebraska defensively, they are better than TCU. TCU did not, they didn't look great, but Colorado has something to prove. I think they're going to be able to turn it on for the home crowd. I don't think Nebraska is going to have an answer offensively. So I lean Colorado, but I'm just going to watch this one from the sidelines. And I guess I had a question for you, Ben, because I was thinking about this earlier this morning. So you mentioned Travis Hunter. What are your thoughts on, do you think he is going to be able to stay healthy playing both sides of the ball? Do you think that's feasible with all the taking that many snaps, like as far as what his prognosis is for the rest of this season?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yes and no. The yes is he is kind of one of a kind. I mean, we saw it out there. Like, it's not like he was taking plays off and he was tired. Like a few plays before his interception at the goal line, he like ran down a guy from the other side of the field. And then he wasn't like taking plays off. He's different. But at the same time, I think later in the season, you're going to start to see one of two things. Either Colorado's going to have to pull back some of his snaps because I just don't think it's possible for a guy to play 100-plus snaps for the whole season. Yeah, and it was an intense heat too, which is, I mean, again, absolutely insane. But I do think in a game like this, I'm not too worried about any of that. Now the injuries, that's different because the more plays, it's a numbers game, right? You have a higher chance of just something going wrong, so that is a concern too. But I think in this spot, like I think he'll be just fine, whatever Colorado decides to do with him. And I think one thing the Buffs can do is kind of use him as a decoy on offense too at times, because when he's on the field, you have to know where he's at and put him in motion and maybe run some misdirection, try to disguise things a little bit. So I'm actually going to take an interesting angle on this one, and I'm actually leaning with the under 59.5. And here's my thinking. So Nebraska in that Minnesota game, they played very slow. I think they had 56 plays and 29 minutes of possession versus Minnesota 69 in about 30 minutes. And I think the recipe for Nebraska to keep this close and potentially win it is they're going to have to play pretty slow. Because if it turns into a shootout like a TCU CU game, Nebraska does not have the firepower to keep up and to score with Sanders on offense. So I'm leaning with the under. I think Nebraska's going to just, again, milk the shit out of the clock, play as slow as possible. I think Matt Rule knows that that's going to have to happen. The only concern is if the Buffs do go up 2 scores and then Nebraska does have to hurry it up. But I just don't think Sims at quarterback is capable of, putting up 30 points in this game. So I'm leaning with the under. It's, I guess, a little contrarian just based on what we saw in week 1 from Nebraska, but that's going to be my lean there.
I like that. Yeah.
And I'm actually going to this game too, so I'm pretty excited.
Nice.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy. Like the ticket prices are insane. There's a lot of hype, of course, behind Colorado. And just a year ago, like we were the laughing stock of college football, and now we're kind of the storyline of college football. So Deion's going to have to get those guys prepared and focused up because there was a little bit of that, hey, we did it type feel after the CU or the TCU game. But now they have to kind of reel it back in and say, like, all right, we got to focus up. Like that was one game out of 12.
Right, exactly. And I have a request for you to take a shot out of or drink a beer out of a shoe if Colorado wins.
Oh, all right. I mean, I did it for the Nuggets when they won the NBA championship. So some people are probably like watching this now, like, a what out of a what?
So yeah. I think we need to run that back. That would be awesome.
Here's actually a really good point. And this is a talking point where I'm going to give my opinion on it. It's going to be contrarian from what all the other talking heads are saying. So, like, there is this idea that maybe TCU just sucks, right? And on defense, yeah, their defense didn't look the best. Like, we can all admit that. But I will say that Colorado did leave a few points on the board. Travis Hunter had a drop in the end zone too, if we remember. So that could be another 7. Offensively, I thought TCU looked pretty good, but maybe he's just talking about defense. Yeah, of course, there's a chance they just didn't look good and they're not as good as maybe the market expected. But I think the eye test just kind of showed me that CU has some really talented players out there. CU's not going to go for 40 in this game, but I'm still confident that they can put up 30. And, CU didn't really run like anything too exotic. I wouldn't be shocked if we see like a flea flicker, some quarterback pass, maybe an end around, because Deion has those plays in the book. He's ready to unleash those, and I think the first game, yeah, maybe you don't do anything like that, but I think in this game at home, I could definitely see some sort of exotic, quarterback goes out for a pass, something like that along those lines. So really excited for this one.
Yeah, I'm very excited for you. It's kind of like my LSU FSU excitement from Sunday. I was like just over the moon after the very nerve-wracking first half.
Yeah, really close in the first, and then talent prevailed, I would say.
Yeah, so I can echo that sentiment, and I hope and again, I'm leaning Colorado as well. I don't really have an opinion on the total, but the way you explained it, I mean, that does make sense, because I completely agree about the Nebraska not having the horses to keep up, and then Colorado not really needing to just have this huge offensive performance. They just need to win this game. I have heard a lot of people on the over, but yeah, that under is, I mean, it actually makes a lot of sense.
Altitude too, like,
Mhm.
Nebraska is not going to want to go up tempo. I can see why people are on the over after what they saw with Colorado's defense too. Colorado's really going to have to stop the run, because if I'm Matt Rule, like, I look to run the ball up the middle, keep things on the ground as much as possible. And yeah, Ferguson's. I was just kind of speaking to what I've been seeing on Twitter. People trying to discredit the Buffs as much as possible, because I think some people are just like, there's no way that they could be this good. And I still feel like there's some doubters out there. But CU still has a lot to prove, right? It's one game, so I'm not
Right.
running my victory laps yet. I have some insane bookmark tweets, like, you would think like I like came out and said like I hate kids or something, the way I was like, let's go. But like, I've never seen it, and I've been on Twitter, I've seen all sorts of wild messages, like me being over on the Buffs win total. It was like I struck a chord with people, but hey, it is what it is. Uh, let's go to the next game here. Keep it moving. Oregon versus Texas Tech. So Texas Tech, they looked really good in the first quarter against Nebraska, or against Wyoming. Second quarter, decent, and then